that Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos arrive. Is Colorado's roster talent being overlooked? And should the Avalanche move on from a brand new, fresh face over at Ball Arena? All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin in the world of the NFL, where the task that I have given myself today, and one that I encourage and extend to you, is how should we evaluate Bo Nix in his sophomore season, year 2 in the NFL? He's coming off of a rookie season where I think he took a lot of people around the league and in the NFL by surprise as the 6th quarterback taken off the board in what was touted as one of the more historic quarterback classes in the history of the NFL. Sean Payton calls his shot, identifies his guy. He and George Payton fell in love with Bo Nix early on in the evaluation process, and they were able to get their guy without having to move up and mortgage future assets that would hurt them even further in the wake of the Russell Wilson disaster. Bo struggles for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season, becomes the first Broncos quarterback, I believe, ever to not have a touchdown pass in his first 3 starts at the NFL level. Even from a broader, beyond just the Broncos sense, it was pretty rough. That abysmal 10-9 victory over the New York Jets in East Rutherford, and the rain and the sloppy conditions. And then after that, a page started to turn. It felt like the fire hose that Bo Nix was drinking through had significantly reduced its pressure, and he turned himself into a bona fide Rookie of the Year candidate who was outpaced only by Jaden Daniels, who had a rookie campaign end in the NFC title game with the Washington Commanders, and Brock Bowers, who may be the best tight end in the NFL right now after just 1 year. So what all does that say for Bo Nix, who finishes with a 10-7 record in his rookie season and a wild card berth, but that was ended by the Buffalo Bills? What does that say about year 2 in the NFL? Did the Broncos and Bo Nix catch a few too many green lights, and therefore the sophomore expectations for Bo Nix should be more tempered, or perhaps in preparation for what could be perceived as a slump? Or do we take the building block and the foundation that we saw in weeks 4 through 17 or 18 that Bo Nix established and project that forward for another leap after a full off season with Sean Payton, further time to hone in his skills and worry less about the fundamentals of getting the play in and lining things up at the line of scrimmage, and being able to have a little bit more fluidity and freedom within the offense? Should that be the way that we look at it? I tend to lean toward the latter. I think if you've got 2 eyes and a functioning brain, it's hard to imagine Bo Nix taking a significant or even necessarily a slight step back in 2025. And that's not all to do with just Bo Nix and his internal personal development. It also has to do with the team around him. Bo Nix was able to do what he did last season without any true semblance of a rushing offense week to week and game to game. Between Javonte Williams, Audric Estime, and Jaleel McLaughlin, neither one of them, I shouldn't say any of them, were able to firmly grasp the starting offensive role at the running back position. And Javonte Williams, who carried it for the majority of the season, did it in large part because of his ability as a pass blocker, and because he was the most adept player to catch passes out of the backfield, or at least in the eyes of Sean Payton. Well, that's all changed now. The Broncos drafted Audric Estime in the 2nd round, somebody who figures to be used in both the running and passing game. They signed J.K. Dobbins later in the offseason, post-draft and free agency, during mandatory minicamp, to be a veteran presence and someone who's going to compete and contend right away, and probably will assume the starting mantle of the job in week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. They also go out and get Evan Ingram to be a tight end and a joker in this offense, something that Bo Nix didn't have last season, and was kind of used Marvin Mims in that role, whether by force of circumstance or what have you. And they go out and get Pat Bryant to be a complementary piece and potentially a number 2 receiver alongside Courtland Sutton. Marvin Mims figures to take a step forward. We saw some explosive playmaking from him, a game breaker against Houston. Two fantastic plays against the Cincinnati Bengals that helped force that game into an overtime thriller. And then you had surprising seventh-round production out of Devon Vele and Troy Franklin, who had this mercurial up-and-down run as a former teammate of Bo Nix's at Oregon that culminated, despite how rocky it may have been to get there, but culminated with the game-opening touchdown against the Buffalo Bills in the postseason. So all of that around Bo Nix, with an offensive line that is returning everyone, a defense that's essentially returning everyone of measure with additions like Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, Alex Singleton returning from injury, and first-round cornerback in Jahdae Barron. All of these things point to me that a step back from Bo Nix is far less likely than a step forward. And if it is, quote unquote, a statistical step back, I think it could be explained away more in the sense of a more balanced offense with a complementary run game than Bo Nix having to be relied upon to throw the Broncos into games and out of bad situations. And I saw CBS Sports put out their top 100 list heading into the 2025 season for the NFL. So the top 100 NFL players heading into the 2025 season. 3 Denver Broncos were on that list. Patrick Surtain at number 9, Quinn Miners at number 51, and Garrett Bowles at number 74. So 3 Denver Broncos, none of which are free agent acquisitions or incoming players, made that list, all of which were in the top 75. Several quarterbacks were on that list, including 4 in the top 10 when you look at Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. But other players, Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels checking in the top 35 at number 33. Several quarterbacks were on the list. Bo Nix was not one of them. But there was a quarterback that got my wheels turning a little bit, and that is Jordan Love, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And I thought to myself, Jordan Love, who is in his 4th or 5th year, heading into his 5th year or so in the NFL, sat behind Aaron Rodgers for the first part of his career. He checks in at number 92 on the NFL's top 100 list, according to CBS Sports. Well, then I started thinking to myself, what did Jordan Love look like in 2024? What did the Packers look like in 2024? And I came to a conclusion that I think Bo Nix had a better season than Jordan Love in 2024 as a rookie. When you compare them both statistically and put them side by side, it points pretty clearly to me, Bo Nix passing for just under 3,800 yards, eclipsing Jordan Love's 3,400, 29 touchdowns for Bo to 25 for Jordan Love. Essentially the same in terms of interceptions, 12 to 11, but a slight edge to Jordan Love there. And then from a completion percentage perspective, Bo Nix clears Jordan Love by 3 full percentage points. Mind you, this is a rookie in the NFL, not Jordan Love, someone who's had nearly half a decade of experience at the NFL level. And as a starter, Jordan Love was 9-6. Bo Nix was 10-7. Love missed 2 games due to injury, which you could point to and say maybe hampered or hindered Jordan Love's statistical production or his ability to put up the same numbers that Bo did in 17 games. But both teams finished 3rd in their division. The Broncos finished 3rd in the AFC West. The Packers finished 3rd in the NFC North. And both teams went to the wild card round where they lost to a superior team with more firepower, the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles. So I say all of that to say, under the umbrella of evaluating Bo Nix, I think Bo Nix should finish the 2025 season, and we should be going into the 2026 season with Bo Nix as a legitimate top 100 player in the NFL from a national perspective, whether it's CBS Sports, ESPN, the NFL puts out their own list. I think the bar for Bo Nix in 2025, as he completes this season upcoming, should be that he replaces the likes of a Jordan Love and maybe even inches himself a little higher on the list than 92 as a top 100 player in the NFL. Because if that production from Jordan Love that we just showed you is there and is acceptable from an individual standpoint to be a 92nd rated player out of 100. And from a team perspective, what he was able to bring his team to do, double-digit wins, wild card postseason berth, etc. Bo Nix has already done those things. And I think that the emphasis of a strength, which is the Broncos defense with the additions that they made, and the way that they attempted to shore up their weakness from a skill position standpoint on offense, should lead Bo Nix to at least match, if not more likely succeed and surpass his mark set in 2024. We will see how it ultimately plays out for Bo and the Broncos, but in terms of a preseason bar for evaluation, I am in this moment on June 24th, 2025, setting the bar for Bo Nix to be a top 100 NFL player when these lists and evaluations come around next offseason. Speaking of off seasons, the NHL offseason is underway. And the Colorado Avalanche have some interesting decisions to make as it relates to one of their new faces in town. The roster in Colorado was given a complete overhaul by general manager Chris McFarland in the 2024 season, starting with the goalie room, shipping out Alexander Georgiev and Justus Annunen, bringing in the woodshed of Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood from San Jose and Nashville, respectively. But then, by slicing off a core member and one of the more successful franchise players in recent history in Mikko Rantanen, Chris McFarland was able to overhaul the roster from top six to bottom six and try to address the one thing that has held the Avalanche back in all of the years outside of the 2021-2022 season when they won the Stanley Cup. And that is quality scoring depth across their four lines. The Cup year, they had that. Arturi Lehkonen was a piece that was added that season, going into that season. Darren Helm, Cogliano, etc. And they were never able to replicate that kind of scoring depth when you look at all those players that they acquired on deadline day, having key signature goals and moments in the postseason en route to the franchise's third Stanley Cup. They also failed to replace their second-line center. They had tried with Casey Middlestad and just the revolving door laundry list of names. Well, they slice off Mikko Rantanen, and they turn that into Brock Nelson, who was the latest iteration of a second-line center and someone that the Avalanche have re-signed. They bring in Charlie Coyle to be their third-line center. They bring in Jack Drury to be their fourth-line center. They add Ryan Lindgren and other depth pieces on that end of the ice. And ultimately, it resulted in a first-round exit at the hands of the Dallas Stars, who acquired Mikko from the Carolina Hurricanes, something that I don't think Chris McFarland ever assumed would happen, or if he did, was confident that they could overcome it regardless. They don't, and now it kind of shifts the tone of this upcoming offseason, because those moves by Chris McFarland and company were clearly a pushing of the chips into the center of the table to go all in on a cup season right now. Brock Nelson had an expiring contract. Charlie Coyle had an expiring contract. You had other players, Marty Necas, the centerpiece, the focal piece of that trade, who was going to replicate Mikko Rantanen's production, had an expiring contract with 1 year left going into this offseason. So now a lot of decisions have to be made about who stays and who goes. Well, Brock Nelson is staying. They re-signed him for 3 more years on an average annual value of $7.5 million. And the decision is going to have to be made on Charlie Coyle, who has the 1 year remaining on his deal, as I mentioned, and he's making about $5.25 million annually. That's a pretty penny for a third-line center for a lot of teams around the league. And the question came up, should the Avs move on from Charlie, look to trade him before he walks away in free agency, and the Avs potentially can net nothing in return? They may have, if they were more interested or perhaps willing to pay a little bit more for the services of a Jonathan Toews, the legendary Chicago Blackhawk and former Conn Smythe Trophy winner, multi-time Cup champion, who is now attempting to return to the ice. And he will do so with his hometown Winnipeg Jets instead of the Colorado Avalanche, who are reportedly interested, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are reportedly interested in. But that option is now off the table. And Charlie Coyle, as of now, still remains on the roster, but the phones are buzzing over at Ball Arena, and per Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet, teams are very interested in the services of Charlie Coyle and what he can bring. The Avalanche find themselves in an advantageous situation, as Elliot Friedman has reported, where they can sit and wait a little bit because Logan O'Connor is expected to start the season on LTIR, the long-term injured reserve, says Elliot Friedman. The Avalanche made it clear they don't need to do anything. Other teams keep calling, though, and the more you say no, the more you see how far other teams are willing to go. So this is a good position, I think, for the Avalanche to be in, because while they don't need to do anything, they have the opportunity to sit back and wait and see if there is something to be done. And there very likely may be something that needs to be done, as the Colorado Avalanche find themselves as one of the worst cap situation teams in the NHL heading into the season, with about $1.2 million in space left to maneuver with and about 19 players currently signed on the roster. So could Charlie Coyle and would Charlie Coyle be a quality third-line center for the Avs in the 2025 season? Yes. But when you've got $12.6 million a year locked up in Nathan MacKinnon, who's worth every penny, you've got 7.5 locked up at your second-line center slotting with Brock Nelson that you just paid over the next 3 years, and you're due $5.25 million for Charlie Coyle on your third line, that starts to add up pretty quickly in a harder salary cap sport, which, yes, the cap will be increasing over the next handful of years due to TV revenue, but that's a lot of money tied up in the center of your roster from top to bottom, and Jack Drury being the fourth person on that line, who gave you a lot of great production alongside Logan O'Connor and the Parker Kellys or the Kivirantas of the world. In my opinion, if the Avs can get the right price and recoup some assets and free up some money to be able to spread the depth a little bit around for Charlie Coyle, I think they absolutely should explore that option. But I don't want to do it for just anyone. Jonathan Toews, for example, a 37-year-old player who spent a couple of years away from the ice recovering from long-term effects of COVID-19, is trying to make a comeback. And yes, you could say, hey, we can get Jonathan Toews for 2.5 or 2.7 or 2.25, whatever it is, and slice that Charlie Coyle salary in half. That part sounds great. But in order to do that, you'd be having to bet that what you just witnessed with Gabe Landeskog and his long recovery from his knee cartilage replacement surgery, being able to come back the way that he did, you're hoping that that can happen again. And that feels like a gamble that I personally am not willing to take. It was amazing that Gabe Landeskog not only came back after a short stint with the Eagles, but practiced back-to-back, played back-to-back games, and then entered an NHL postseason series where for several games of that 7-game ultimately disappointing series, Gabe Landeskog was one of the better players on the ice. So the Avs absolutely got lucky and we're on the right side of a historic comeback with Gabe Landeskog. I don't know that you want to immediately dip back into the well and rest your third line center depth on that happening again. Jonathan Toews already going to Winnipeg, so not a realistic option there. But I say that to say that the Avalanche have a good third line center in Charlie Coyle, albeit a more expensive one than maybe you would like. And I don't want to dump that just for anyone to spread out more salary. We will see how Chris McFarland, Joe Sakic, and company address the NHL offseason, which is fully underway. We have the draft on the horizon, and we will see what moves will be made at Ball Arena for both teams in our Nuggets and the Avalanche. The Nuggets are hearing from their new regime in the front office of Ben Tenzer and John Wallace, along with KSE Vice Chairman Josh Kroenke, speaking as I speak now, and we will be here to react to everything that comes from that press conference tomorrow at noon. We'll see you then.